I respect the AFL-CIO a lot. I work with them closely. I agree with them much more often than I disagree with them, but I care a lot about organized labor. I'm a strong believer in collective bargaining and workers' rights and union rights. But I also ultimately have to make some of these tough decisions where there are arguments on both sides and the weight of the decision comes down on the other side for me. And I do think it's worth noting that that's not a situation that J.B. Pritzker has ever found himself in. Well, I think that the first major revenue step that needs to be taken is to repeal the flat tax provision of the Constitution. And when you think about the community college price tag, which is something on the order of 2% of the general revenue fund, that you can sort of tweak along the edges and find that money without needing big structural reforms. When it comes to bolder revenue changes, I support taxing on South Street financial transactions. I support closing the carried interest tax loophole. I think these are changes that are really important if we're going to have a tax system that's designed to match a modern economy as opposed to a tax system that's built for an economy that fundamentally no longer exists. I think there's been no clear explanation of the benefits to Illinois of Amazon coming, and certainly no clear explanation of the distribution of the benefits. Where does it go? To what communities? And so am I at this point comfortable with that offer? No, I'm not. Carlos had made some statements about BDS that were, in my opinion, ambiguous. He had actually voted in city council for an extremely strong anti-BDS resolution. And so in light of all that, I had a conversation with him before asking him to join the ticket. And the outcome of that conversation was an understanding that I thought we shared regarding a shared view about BDS, which is, to your second part of the question, strong support for justice for Palestine, strong support for human rights for Palestinians, commitment to a two-state solution with two politically free and economically thriving states existing side by side in peace and security. Quite frankly, strong opposition to many of the policies of the Israeli government and great frustration with those policies, and the view that it would be better for the U.S. to take a more aggressive posture regarding some of Israel's conduct, for instance, around the settlements, which are officially against U.S. foreign policy, and yet the U.S. has not done an awful lot to dissuade Israel from building settlements. We agreed on all that stuff, and I had the understanding that we also agreed that BDS was not the right way to advance those goals for a variety of reasons I can explain to you if you're interested. Once the campaign started and questions started being asked, it became clear that that understanding was not there. Perhaps there had been a miscommunication, perhaps a change of mind. I can't speak to that. I've been to the West Bank, visited a school that was in the literal physical shadow of the wall. Listen, I come from an Israeli background. My mother is Israeli. I grew up spending a fair amount of time there. I'm really sickened by the conduct of the Israeli government around these issues. Well, let's start with policy. I agree that JB has done a really good job of adopting a lot of my policies during the course of this campaign, and I'm appreciative of that. It is definitely the sincerest form of flattery. Just to give an example, I've been talking about a progressive income tax since I started running for state representative close to 11 years ago. On that issue, I cannot tell you how useful it would have been when we were fighting this fight in 2013 and 2014 for JB to get up and say, you know what? I would pay more under this plan, but that's the right thing to do. That's the way a modern tax system ought to work. And by the way, I'm going to spend $56.2 million funding a campaign to make it happen. We would have a progressive income tax today if JB had been willing to do that back then, but he was utterly silent. There are things like taxing financial transactions, closing the carried interest loophole, single-payer healthcare, free college, we just differ, we just disagree. And I will admit, to your question, those are not tomorrow things. And I think there is incredible value in saying, we're going to get there eventually. Kennedy, there's even more differences, interestingly. Things like legalization of cannabis is very, very confusing to know what his position is. Rent control he opposes. There's more. Kennedy's been less meticulous about copying me than Pritzker. The notion that just being successful in business means that you'll be effective as a government leader is frankly absurd. He's saying Bruce Rauner has all this money, so we need someone with as much money or more to go toe-to-toe, and that's me. That's the actual argument that he has. We need a billionaire to go up against a billionaire. And so when I say we've got to decide if we're going to have an election or an auction, that's what I mean. There's a fundamental difference in theory of change. I guess that's the real thing I'm saying here. JB's theory of change is write a bigger check. My theory of change is build a better movement. And the more of the economy that's tied up in the financial sector, the more you have this global effort to push down wages, this global effort to make life worse for both workers and ultimately probably consumers as well. I don't know, like look around, right? It sort of feels that way, right? That there's this kind of generational transfer of massive amounts of wealth that just grow and grow and grow and grow without any apparent connection to particularly productive economic activity.
Yes, we appreciate you coming in. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Really appreciate it. Really appreciate all the interest and the questions.
Thank you.